Greetings and welcome to the Words About Games review of The Red Strings Club, a cyberpunk adventure game that ponders on the meaning of fate, free will and happiness whilst tasking players with bringing down Supercontinent Limited, a megacorporation on the verge of releasing an involuntary human upgrade program called Social Psyche Welfare, using a variety of different tools and skill sets including pottery, bartending, and impersonating people on the phone. As an adventure game, Red Strings Club relies heavily on its story, dialogue, and characters over more traditional gameplay. The game presents a futuristic world where humans have advanced to the point where they install cybernetic upgrades in themselves, which can theoretically solve all of life's problems and bring happiness to whoever uses them. Mods exist that can boost someone's charisma, let them gain followers on social media, enhance their sex appeal, and much more. This is where the game starts. The first act of the Red Strings Club puts players in control of Akira 184, an android who crafts and installs these upgrades to order. You'll be presented with someone who has a specific problem and a catalogue of upgrades to choose from to help them solve that problem. It's here that you'll first encounter the philosophical musings that power much of the Red Strings Club's narrative. If someone wants to be more popular on social media, for example, will they be happier with an upgrade that will make that happen, or one that will nullify their need for social acceptance? These themes carry on throughout the whole game, framed around a more traditional cyberpunk story that sees you taking on the role of underdogs fighting against a corporate conspiracy. As you progress between acts, the characters and gameplay change, but your core objectives never do. Whether you're crafting upgrades as Akira 184 or tending bar as Donovan, your goal is to manipulate human emotions for one reason or another, only the methods change. Red Strings Club puts together a compelling narrative. Sure, it presents you with choices that can have fairly dramatic effects on the outcome of the story, testing you with making choices that ripple out through the rest of the game, and giving your bartending some high stakes by giving you a list of information you'll need to extract from your customers through smart questioning and plenty of alcohol. But the game is at its most compelling when it brings the moral and philosophical arguments to the forefront. As with any good story such as this, it isn't simply black and white. While the corporate conspiracy is the driving force behind the narrative, it's the people caught up in its centre that are truly the focus. Red Strings Club boasts a large cast of unique, weird characters at its core. Sandwiched between an opening that sees you sculpting upgrades and pondering human happiness, and an ending that serves as a climax to your attempts to bring down a corporation, is a lengthy section of simply talking with these people, trying to subtly extract their secrets while plying them with plenty of drink and debating things like free will and morality. Or sometimes just how horny they are. Each of these characters is memorable in their own way, with some fantastic writing backing up some lofty themes. This is also a game that demands to be replayed. After the conclusion of my first 3-hour playthrough, I was eager to explore different paths and decisions and find the information that I missed. Once you reach the conclusion of your playthrough, as all your choices and information collide with the narrative, you'll undoubtedly want to dive back in a second time, armed with a better understanding of the world and what's to come. Between its slick neon-lit pixel art and its varied, excellent soundtrack, the Red Strings Club oozes style from every pore of its being. The game is quite light on sound design, save for the clinking of an ice cube in a glass or the beeps that accompany each syllable of dialogue, which changes pitch depending on who's talking, giving you a subtle way of figuring out who's saying what without necessarily reading names. Instead, Red Strings Club sucks you into every one of its scenes through a masterful and almost ever-present score. When a character remarks that a specific encounter was intense, for example, you can feel it thanks to the grindy, pounding bass line that accompanies it. It's not simply that the soundtrack is great, which it most certainly is, but rather that it always knows exactly what buttons to push to thoroughly immerse you in whatever is happening on screen at any given moment. It builds a great atmosphere and works well in conjunction with the pixel art style to create a thoroughly engaging world. Red Strings Club is split into 3 very distinct acts, both in terms of story and gameplay. Each of these acts tasks players with a different gameplay style, almost as if it's 3 different games unified by an overarching narrative. In the first part of the game, you'll be sculpting upgrades in a similar fashion to making clay pots. The middle act sees you manipulating the moods and emotions of customers by mixing drinks, and the final act sees you attempting to take down a corporation using a voice modulator and your accumulated knowledge to call people and find the information you need. Sculpting upgrades isn't the greatest experience. You need to continuously click the mouse to spin the biomatter, selecting from a variety of differently shaped tools to mold it into the desired shape. It's an interesting gameplay idea in theory, but in practice it's very fiddly and fairly awkward. The hand that you control by moving the mouse is very floaty, which will lead you to constantly make mistakes, either in selecting tools or while trying to delicately craft the desired upgrade. The same goes for the bartending portions. You've got 4 basic spirits, each with an arrow on the label, and you need to mix these drinks to guide a cursor over whatever emotion you want to draw out of your customer, making use of more advanced spirits and techniques as you unlock them. Again, however, the controls themselves are pretty fiddly and will lead to a lot of spilled drinks and starting over as you accidentally pour too much bourbon into a glass. The bartending, however, is less frustrating thanks to there being a lot more going on than simply pouring drinks. While sculpting upgrades is basically your core goal in the first act, mixing drinks is more of a means to an end. Frustrating controls aside, the middle act of the game is incredibly engaging as you attempt to extract useful information from the people that enter your bar. Figuring out the right combination of spirits, emotions, and questions to cross off your inquiries on your objective list is compelling, making the frustrations while trying to mix spirits melt away. The final act is mostly about putting what you've learned while bartending to use. There's not much gameplay here save for dialing a phone and choosing a voice to impersonate from a list. It's still a great section of the game, but it's quite light on gameplay, acting instead as a giant multi-layered puzzle, tasking you with putting the correct pieces in the correct order to complete your goals and stop Supercontinent Limited. The Red Strings Club is a compelling cyberpunk adventure, serving as both an engaging thriller and a pretty great exploration of the themes of free will, humanity, and happiness. A diverse cast of excellent characters helps ground a solid narrative, allowing these themes to play out naturally on the backdrop of a more traditional cyberpunk story with a wonderful soundtrack that draws players into each scene. While the gameplay mechanics themselves can be a tad frustrating to interact with, this doesn't really detract from the game in any meaningful way. The first act itself is a little slow going, but the game builds excellently towards a thrilling conclusion. Slowly drawing information out of the clients of the Red Strings Club with a mixture of alcohol and keen questioning is incredibly compelling, with a great payoff in the game's climax as you put all of your uncovered information to use in what is probably the most engaging use of calling around an office I've ever seen in a video game. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you've enjoyed it, please consider leaving us a like or a comment or even subscribing to the YouTube channel. And as always, keep your eyes on wordsaboutgames.net for everything that we do, including all of our reviews, our gameplay videos, our interviews, and our weekly podcast. Have a great day, guys.